Welcome to today's video. This is going to be the part 2 of the what's in my backpack as a general carpenter. Right now it's a long weekend. This may not be posted during the long weekend, but I decided I was going to clear out all the tools that I had at different job sites and bring them all home to organize all my boxes and everything. So I'm going to show you guys everything that I kind of have as a general carpenter and I use kind of on a daily basis. So, with this being the Easter long weekend, I figured this is the perfect time to bring home everything that I have on different sites. And we're going to go through, I'm going to organize all my stuff and clean out the back of my truck. So, everything's kind of just a mess, and I've just tossed it inside the truck at the moment. But at the front end here, I've got a bunch of my paint supplies that have just been sitting loose. So, trays, little buckets, some small mini rollers. I've also got just a small can with a bit of primer in it. At the front here, I've got my Metabo pin nailer, which I have a video on. So I'm going to kind of just pull stuff out and I'll show you guys what I've got going on as I remove it. So down here, I've got a handmade jig for door handles. So I've got a proper jig from Craig, but it only lets you go up to 5-inch, where if I'm doing anything bigger, I use something like this that I make that you can stick on the side of the cabinet. I have 2 different Milwaukee hole saw kits, just in different sizes and a couple different arbors. In here, I've got my levels. So I've got my 2, my 4, and my 6 foot. So in this bucket, I've got a lot of my drywall tools. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I've got all my knives, some paper, some quick mud for repairs, some mesh tape, and some paper tape. Similar with this one, it's my paint bucket. So I've also got my glue, my miter bond, some magic erasers, sanding pads, some fillers, and a couple loose switch plates. So I have my Milwaukee battery operated table saw. So I used to have a larger job site table saw, but I found if I was carrying other tools and I needed to bring that to site, it became pretty hard. Where this is super compact, so I can keep this around, keep it in my truck, or leave it on sites, and it's nice and small and it's out of the way. So in my first pack out here, this pack out is kind of just my miscellaneous stuff. So I've got a couple shark bite fittings for capping lines, the removing tool, emery cloth. I've got chalk with a couple extra bits in here. This one, I just have a bunch of door hardware, loose keys, a couple pieces of screws here, loose sizes, same with this. I have some blades for my drywall, and I've got a couple laser measurers. I have my countersink bits and a couple wall plugs. I've also got my tool to remove tub drains, some additional lead here for my pencil, and a bottle opener with a key tool. In my next pack out here, This one also is kind of a miscellaneous one at the moment. So I've got a bunch of nails here for my 15 and 18 gauge nailers. I've got more 18 gauge nails. I've got some line holders, some more drywall anchors, a bunch of tap cons in 2 different sizes, cabinet plugs for covering up screw holes, different colors. I've got bags of screw handles as well as loose ones. I do a lot of kitchen work, so I tend to carry a variety of different sizes for these screws, as well as some larger drywall anchors here, some extra inserts for the pack out sets, and a Moen, I think this is a kitchen tap set. In my next pack out here, this is where I keep all my screws, and I've got most of these actually labeled here. So I've got drywall screws, a bunch of wood screws, flooring screws, so different sizes of drywall screws. I've got L brackets, a bunch of loose cabinet screws, a couple 4-inch here. I've got a bunch of plugs in a variety of different colors. Same thing, more screws and different options here for you. So I'm going to clean out a bunch of the stuff I have on the side, and then I'm going to go through my bigger pack outs, which is where I carry a lot of my tools. So I've got a broom, I've got my hawk. I have this cheap leaf blower that I actually use to clean out sites, get a bunch of wood dust off and stuff when I'm finished up my day. I've got 2 extendable poles, one with a paint roller, one with a sander on it. I keep saran wrap for taping up paintbrushes and rollers when I don't need them, and I'm going to bring them home and clean them or use them again later throughout the day. I've got a couple pieces of ABS piping as well as some carpet protection. I carry just a small piece of scrap for filling in holes on drywall for backing, as well as a mixing paddle for mud. I've got my container for holding mud. On the end here, I've got the attachments for the blower. I keep a couple pieces of leftover floor transitions here. So if I'm showing a client some options, we've got some color options and size options so I know what I need, as well as a spare caulking gun and a spare paint roller. So let's jump in to my first big pack out here. This one is kind of like my loose carpentry tools, so there's going to be a lot of loose stuff that I do carry in here. So I'll go through the majority of it, but there's a bunch of random things that I do carry. This one tends to have a lot of my cutting tools in it, so I got chisels, ABS cutters. I've got a bunch of spare pencils, some markers. I've got punches and a small level, as well as a spare set of Allen keys in here. I keep a set of fine point drill bits, so if I'm marking a new tool that I make to do my cabinet handles, or if I'm doing cabinet handles and just measuring them out, I'll use this to set all my marks, and then I'll start drilling. On the other side here, I've got my gherkin trim jig. This one is super handy. I've had this for a while and I love using it. I've got a small catcher for doing like drywall repair if I don't want to get a lot of dust in a finished area, a second spare laser level, a cabinet hinge jig, a bunch of thin head nails, some wax. I've got a spare bit for my router. I've got a temperature gun. I've also got a drywall rasp. And then I've got a ratchet, small little chisel, and other loose little items like that in here. So this is going to be where I carry all the bigger tools here. So I've got 2 bags for setting doors or lifting up like the front end of a fridge or anything like that. Staple hammer. I've got these. So these are actually for installing drywall and covering up the inside of the box to protect the wires before you router that out. This is my handle jig from Craig, but like I said, it only goes up to 5 inches. So when I'm doing something that's bigger than 5, I'll make a jig so I can get that accurate. I've got some tin snips. I've got a small little saw here for doing trim. I've got a guide here, so if I'm installing a floor or something and I have to trace out a dimension, I can use this. I've got another small tool here for doing trim if I've got a hard miter to do. I've got a pedal for installing drywall. Some corner tools, so if I'm making a window box prior and I want my corners to be tight, I can use this, build the box, get those corners tight and glued. My ABS cutter. I've got a spare tape measure that I always keep in the truck. I've got 2 squares, trim square. I've got 2 different chalk lines, one in red, one in blue, as well as additional chalk. I've got an insulation saw and a small set of adjustables. My red chalk. 2 mallets if I'm installing flooring or something. An additional pry bar. I've got some ABS cement. 2 small cases of finishing nails, 3/4 and 1 inch. A set of safety glasses. An older set of snips. I normally use these older beat up ones for doing like drywall corners, stuff like that. I've got a set of all round, and then I've got some drywall bits with some extra actual bits for my drill, and then 1 longer bit here. So let's look at my next pack out here. This one is where I keep all my bare tools or extra tools. I've got a couple attachments for my router. I've got a palm sander here. I have a pneumatic brad nailer. I don't carry my compressor, so I don't really use the pneumatic nailer very often because I've got the battery operated one. I've got a set of bites for doing ductwork. I've got a drywall router. I've got 1/4 round snips. I've got a spare Milwaukee impact. And I switched in my Makita impact. So in my what's in my backpack video, you'll see this drill quite often, but I switched this out and I started using a different drill. Other than that, I haven't changed anything. I carry in my backpack on a daily, but I'm doing a lot of fine carpentry work recently, cabinets and stuff. So I switched out to a smaller subcompact Milwaukee. I've got just this flashlight. I've got drywall gun. I've got my router. I've got a palm nailer. I don't use this very often, but it comes in handy when you're in a tight, confined space. I've got just an extra set of snips sitting in here. I've got a spare nailer. If I'm working with someone, we're running a couple guns. This one's just really cheap and old. It actually doesn't work too well, but I just keep it in my box in case I ever need it. Spare pry bar. And I've got 2 M12 tools, a drill and an impact. I haven't actually used these in quite a long time, so I probably should look at selling them, but they sit inside my box here, as well as a M12 flashlight and just 2 loose keys. So the next few things we're going to go over is some of my loose tools I carry in bags. I've got my Milwaukee M18 vacuum, as well as a platform to walk on. So I've got my standard M18 vacuum here. Instead of carrying around my shop vac all the time, this is great because it's so compact. In this bag here, I've got my jigsaw with a bunch of loose blades. And in this one, I've got my belt sander. It's a Makita belt sander. So back here on the right side, I just keep my tool belt. It's nothing special. I don't do a lot of like actual framing. A lot of my stuff is more interior finishing, things like that. But when I'm hanging drywall or doing new subfloors, I like to keep this on me so I can just pack it full of screws. I've got a sledgehammer I carry with me, as well as my larger pry bar. So this is my 10-inch sliding Makita miter saw. I try not to carry this with me too often because it is so large. It's hard to get it in and out. If I know I need it and I know I'm going to site and doing a lot of trim or rough framing or something like that, I'll actually take this and leave this on site for as long as it's needed. I'll also allow some of the other guys I work with to use it if they do need it too, just so I don't have to actually have it in my truck or load it in and out at night, because it is quite heavy and a little hard to move once in a while. So at the rear of the truck here, I've got my last pack out, which we'll go through in a minute. I've got a drywall square. I have a M18 rocket light as well as the stand for the miter saw. So again, trying to carry these unless I know I'm going to need it if I'm working on a site with no lights, or if I'm doing a lot of painting. This is come in handy to be able to see imperfections. And then the stand, of course, I don't carry it with me unless I know I need to do the miter saw for trim or something like that. I've just got a spare mask. I keep a better mask inside of my truck, but this one just hangs around in case someone needs it or if I can't find mine. So we'll get into the last packer that I have here. This one is where I keep all my cutting tools. So on the top here, I've got a bunch of different discs for the grinder, sanding pads, keys. I also have larger hole saws, the 5, the 6-inch, as well as a couple loose blades here for my sawzall. I have a spare blade for my circ saw. I have my circ saw, my multi-tool, planer. I've got M12 and M18 hacksaws. I've got a couple attachments for my grinder. Keep my dust bag for my miter saw in here, but I actually don't use this too often. Most of the time I'm cutting outside. Sorry, I guess this is my 6-inch hole saw here. So it's probably a 4 and a 5 that are in my bucket there. The second set of snips again, and then I've got the M12 multi-tool. Some extra bits here. Same with a long one here too. I keep this old rusty file, I guess. And a guide for my wood planer. So I do have a couple other tools that I actually don't really carry on me very often, and I do not leave these on site because I don't use them often. I don't want to forget that I have them on site somewhere and happen to leave them there and they get stolen or something like that. But I've got a telescopic pole here for my laser. I've got my laser level, as well as I've got my 15 gauge pneumatic nailer when I'm hanging like a pre-hung interior hollow core door. I also do have a pancake compressor, but again, I don't ever really carry that with me because majority of the time if I'm doing trim, I'm using my battery operated nailer. And a couple of the items I keep inside the cab of my truck is my bag of batteries. So I've got all the batteries and chargers that I have inside of this carrying bag here. And then this one is my caulking bag. So I keep my caulking, my silicones, everything like that inside of here. So during the winter, I'll leave this one at home or on a site so it doesn't freeze. But during the summer, I tend to just carry this with me at all times in case I need to go somewhere and do something. I also keep inside my cab some Klein testers. So if I'm doing demo or something, I've got a non-contact tester, a plug tester, and then a moisture meter with me. So I carry these just for the small amount of electrical that I have to touch. So what I'm going to do now is clean out the bed of my truck here. I'm going to reorganize and put everything back in because with Monday being the holiday end, I'm going to be stopping at a couple sites in the morning and dropping a bunch of these tools off of different sites where I'm going to be kind of throughout the week. So I don't have to have these on me all the time. I can just drop them once and then I know they're there and ready to go for me when I go to that job later. So now that I've got everything just kind of put back into the truck, I've got it set up where I can stop at the first job site in the morning, drop off the tools I need, go to the next one, drop those tools, go to the third one, drop those, and then I can kind of start my day. So again, everything's kind of like organized chaos in here. I don't carry everything with me all the time, as well as I've got a ton of tiling tools I didn't show you, like my wet saw, all my trowels, things like that. I've got my large SDS also that I never really carry with me unless I know I need it. So there's a bunch of stuff that's not inside of this video that I do have. If you like this video, leave me a comment. Also, if you're working in the trades, what kind of tools are you carrying, or what tools do you carry that I don't have with me? Leave me a comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.